Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Terrance Drew, members of the media, Mrs. Lanicia Collins-Williams, and all our viewers and listeners, good afternoon, and welcome to this another edition of Roundtable. My name is Javan Library, Press Secretary to the Prime Minister. The Roundtable series forms part of the government's ongoing efforts to keep the public informed and engaged with matters of national importance. The Roundtable presents an opportunity for the media to engage the Prime Minister on government matters and concerns in their quest to properly report and provide updates to the general public. Specifically, we are joined by SKNS, Kailoni Johnson, ZIZ, Roma Richardson, and SKN Newsline, Glenn Bart. I ask that you please ensure that your phones are on silent as a show of respect and to not interrupt the discussions that will ensue. At this point, I will turn the mic over to the Honourable Prime Minister to give his opening statement, following which we will open floor for questions from the media and comments or discussions. Thanks for being here and thanks for tuning in. Prime Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Press Secretary, Mr. Javan Library, for your astute and erudite presentation as usual to really help to bring the government to its people and to really relate the information that is relevant. Thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of our people to this another round table. And as was said by our press secretary, that this is really to make sure that our people have access to information and access to me, specifically today, the press. So I want to thank the press for being here as well. Let me thank all of you who are tuned in with us at this particular time. You could have been doing something else, but you choose to spend your time with us here on this round table. I will start off, as usual, and to say good afternoon to all of you with some pertinent information. And then I will ask the press, of course, to ask the relevant questions that they would seem necessary. But let me start off by talking about the Intra-African Trade Fair, IATF 2025, which was held in Algeria. Algeria, you know, by landmass, is the largest African country. I led the delegation to the Intra-African Trade Fair 2025 with a special invitation from the Africa-CARICOM Bank, which was held from September 4 to 6, 2025, as mentioned. I and other leaders from the region represented the Caribbean. We had Prime Minister Motley, Mayor Motley of Barbados, and Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell of Grenada. The IATF is the premier marketplace for the African Continental Free Trade Area, bringing together governments, private sector leaders, financiers, investors, and policymakers under one roof. The 2025 edition closed with US $48.3 billion worth of trade and investment deals and drew thousands of exhibitors, buyers, and policymakers from across Africa and beyond. And of course, St. Kitts and Nevis participated for the first time in such an event. The Caribbean, or the diaspora, is considered the sixth region of the African Union, and therefore we are seeking ways to integrate more and to build stronger relationship with the continent. And of course, we are looking for tangible ways to benefit both the continent and our region, and the IATF is one of those avenues. While there, I featured on the opening presidential panel alongside heads of states, representing not only St. Kitts and Nevis, but also the Caribbean voice within the sixth region of the African Union. And that, of course, was chaired by the president of Algeria. So it was very, very high level. I had the opportunity to present a clear message that the Caribbean and Africa must turn a painful shared history, which is the transatlantic slave trade, into a bridge that I'm terming the transatlantic bridge of hope. This, I think, can help with trade, investment, and shared development between the continent and the region. I also stress that trade must go up between Africa and the Caribbean, which is at a dismal 1% or so. And there's a lot of room for growth. And therefore, we should take advantage of the opportunities for growth between Africa and the Caribbean. This would require that there are ports of call between Africa and the Caribbean, especially West Africa, which is close to us. There should also be communication by way of air, which we are actually discussing as well. We can remember that there was a very large jet that landed here from Nigeria earlier this year, where we had a contingent from Nigeria to enhance trade, people-to-people contact, and so forth. And so we continue to work feverishly to deepen the relationship between CARICOM and the African continent. I want to say that this is part of our government's broader agenda of economic diversification, education reform, infrastructure development, global connectivity under the Sustainable Island State agenda. Secondly, I left Algeria and headed over to Ethiopia, the cradle of humankind, the cradle of human civilization, where we had the second Africa-CARICOM summit. This was the first summit held between the CARICOM and the African Union in person, and that was held at the African Union's headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The second Africa-CARICOM summit was convened on September 7, 2025, in the Nelson Mandela Hall of the African Union headquarters, as mentioned before, in Addis Ababa. This was hosted by the African Union Commission with participation from heads of state and governments across Africa and the Caribbean, alongside regional organizations, the AU, CARICOM, and the Afreximbank. The summit focused on reparatory justice, advancing the case for reparations for Africa and the people of African descent, and of course, that includes the CARICOM region, strengthening Africa-Caribbean relations, deepening trade, investment, education, health, and cultural ties, and global coordination, aligning joint positions in multilateral forums, especially Forum of International Financial Institutions, to better serve our regions, and to coordinate action on climate change and resilience funding, of course. And we also discussed the issue of reparations. So this was historic in the sense that it was the first one held in person. And I chaired the meeting alongside the president of Angola. And so I had a significant presence there as well, helping to push the agenda and to seek to bring Africa and the Caribbean much closer together. The summit advanced institutional mechanisms on health, education, and diaspora Pan-African Commission, HEDPAC, to coordinate joint work in these areas. So I know that HEDPAC will be working to make sure that these things are achieved. As the incoming chair of CARICOM, as I said before, I chaired this meeting along with the AU chair, who is the president of Angola, where a number of critical things, as outlined before, was actually discussed. However, I would like to say that within my delegation, apart from government officials, we had a member from the Reparations Committee in the person of Ras Kolonji, who journeyed with us to Ethiopia. While in Ethiopia, I must report that I had a significant cultural experience. It was revealing. It was, I would say, almost like a pilgrimage and a coming home. I was able to see where humanity would have started in the depths of Africa, in that part, and to know that the people there carry the original genes of humanity, and to know that is where I also come from. I was also able to see a country that has multiple religions, and these religions reached Ethiopia and Africa in their early stages. Those things were eye-opening as well. And I had the opportunity to visit the palace that was built in honor of Haile Selassie, who was the king of Ethiopia until the 1970s. That, I think, going to that particular palace, which is now a museum, having heard so much about him growing up, there's no secret that my mother is Rastafarian, and learning the history and then seeing the history itself, I think that words cannot fully explain the impact that that had on me. But I would say that the trip to Ethiopia was also involved going to an area called Shashamane. Shashamane is an area in Ethiopia that was given to Black people from the West by His Majesty Haile Selassie I. And there are Caribbean people there still living. I met one of them who had been there for 50 years. And they, of course, took part of the Caribbean culture there, but they're living in an area practicing their religion. And I would say again, to actually see Shashamane after having read of it and hear about it so much, that it was really a very positive experience being there. And so we had multiple opportunities to interact with people of Caribbean descent, Rastafarians on 100%, who live in that area of Shashamane. So Shashamane does exist, and our people are actually there. I would like to thank both the leadership of Algeria and the government and the people, and of Ethiopia as well, for having us in these regions. And so I want to encourage people, if you have a chance to visit Africa, you'll recognize that a lot of what is portrayed of Africa is not so at all. Addis Ababa is a very modern city, a very huge city. Ethiopia has well over 100 million people. It is one of the most populous places on earth. And to be in Addis Ababa and experience Addis Ababa with other Caribbean leaders, I would say was a tremendous, tremendous experience. But apart from that, which is the crux of the matter, how will that translate into tangible things for us here in the region and in St. Kitts and Nevis? Again, meeting the African Union and looking for opportunities to establish better trade and communication and to build a relationship and to have a more unified front on the international stage and so forth. I am certain that that is already translating into positive things. There, as you know, Tanzania, the Open University of Tanzania, this year, teachers will join that university to advance their training in teaching. We also have our TVET that will join the TVET in Kenya. And so we are tapping into the educational system of Kenya. And I thank the President Ruto personally for really giving us the opportunity to be able to tap into that. Previously, I had spoken to representatives from the Tanzanian delegation as well, expressing our real thanks for their making the institutions available at no cost to us here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I also met the Vice President of Ghana. When I saw her, I swear she's from St. Kitts. That's just to show that we are really one people. And I told her about our relationship with Cape Coast University, which is the number one ranked university on the west coast of Africa, which is situated in Ghana, that we have opened up in that university a Caribbean corner with a St. Kitts Nevis focus. And I thanked her for really allowing us to do such. But then she revealed to me that she used to be the Vice Chancellor of Cape Coast University until recently when she went into politics. So again, I would simply say that, our connection with Africa is deepening and we are already seeing tangible benefits from such. Just to update us, Africa is the second largest continent, even though it doesn't look like that on the map. It has a population of over 1 billion people. It has the youngest population in the world, and by 2050, it will have 1 in every 3 youth will be an African. 1 in every 3. So just looking at those numbers of having the most arable land, some of the rarest type of resources from the earth, having the people and the projections in terms of population growth, there is no doubt in anybody's mind that Africa will be the focus of attention in the next few decades to come. And so everybody is rushing to Africa. And Africa is where our gene pool is fundamentally from. And we need to get that connection going. One, for the sentimental, historical reasons, and the other reason being it makes economic sense because this is the continent that over the next few decades, with its land, its resources, its people, and its youthful and vibrant nature will definitely be the next center of world activities. The other one that I wanted to really update on also is, and to shift a bit, there's so much other things that I can speak about, but we are actually working on visa-free access to a number of African countries and putting forward that barring security matters, that traveling between Africa and the Caribbean should be as seamless as possible. And I'll continue to push that. We are very advanced with where we are with Nigeria in terms of visa-free travel, and I will continue to pursue that accordingly, and with other African countries. Now, just to switch a bit and switch to extending condolences to Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence, GCMG, OBE, CSM, JP, who passed away on the September 7, 2025, at the age of 93 years old while I was away. He served as the third Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis from 2013 to 2015. His passing marks the loss of a distinguished statesman and nation builder whose contributions span governance, finance, and national development. His career and legacy in finance, he was, of course, one of the founders of the St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank, from what we used to call the Penny Bank, which became one of the largest indigenous financial institutions in the Eastern Caribbean. And so he also served as Governor General. And I want to also add, which I did at our recent lecture series, where he actually contributed in the last few months the equipment necessary to digitize our archives. So even at that stage in his life, he was still determined to contribute to nation development. And so I want to thank Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence for his significant contribution to social and economic development here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and to really thank his wife, who had been his lifelong partner, for sharing him with us, and to thank his family for sharing him with us. For what he has done has really taken St. Kitts from one level to the next. And so we are flying all the flags at half-mast and to really continue to celebrate the life of a man who came from humble beginnings, who rose to the top, but did not rise alone. He rose with the rest of us. We want to thank God for his life, and we want to thank, of course, God for his tremendous contribution to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. May the soul of Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence rest in eternal peace. And I will end it there and give the opportunity to the press to ask their questions at this particular time. Thank you for the opportunity for that opening statement.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll move straight to the press, I think starting with Mr. Bat.
Prime Minister, and welcome back. I want to ask you about the Africa-CARICOM summit. It's centered around the theme of reparation, and that has been one of the most difficult things to tackle right here in the Caribbean. I know CARICOM has taken a vested interest in it as well. And do you see any significant progress being made on that front with regards to what it is we as a people are looking for, and how are we likely to get what we're looking for? That's my first question.
Okay.
My second question relates to your comment that ports will be an important part in facilitating trade development between the Caribbean and Africa. And in July, during the Africa-Caribbean Investment Forum in St. Vincent, yourself and Minister Duggins, Samuel Duggins, signed agreements for various things. Now, Minister Samuel Duggins signed a US $40 million agreement or arrangement for with Gemini Commodities Limited and Afrexim Bank for the construction of a facility to be known as the New Guinea Dock and Moorings, somewhere in the New Guinea area. Again, that's in support of trade and development in the Caribbean and with Africa. And he indicated in an interview with the business reporter, sknvibes.com, that part of the funding is for feasibility studies and initial infrastructure development. And the minister had indicated that some of these studies have already been undertaken or are on their way. So my question is, exactly where in New Guinea is this port to be constructed? Because recently we had a comment with Attorney General Garth Wilkin with regards to this Africa port, so to speak, indicating that there was no such, or that government had no interest in the land that is owned by Sinkis Marine Limited. So can you clarify the situation with that?
Right, thank you very much. Just to answer the last question first, with respect to the land in New Guinea, I think the words of the Attorney General, they speak for themselves. I think there are two different matters here that we should not mix. One is the Attorney General addressing a legal matter that is taking place there, and one is talking about a port development. And they're two totally separate things at this particular time. And the government has no interest, as the Attorney General would have said, with respect to that. There are studies going on as to how we can expand our port facilities here. And of course, you mentioned that the Honorable Samuel Duggins is pursuing that with a company and pursuing that in collaboration with the Afrexim Bank. And they are two completely different things at this particular time.
This name that the minister gave to the reporter, New Guinea Dock and Moorings, I don't know, it's confusing. It suggests some kind of location or?
Right, so
what
he's suggesting that it will be in New Guinea. What I think people are trying to link this to is where the St. Kitts Marine Works and Services, I think that is what the company is called, is located. They're two completely different things. One has nothing to do with the other. So I would advise people not to link one to the other. What is happening in New Guinea with what the minister is pursuing has nothing to do with what is there at this particular time. What is there at this particular time is there. That has nothing to do with this. That is an established business that is operating, and I wish all businesses to do well. And so there is no link between both of them. Yes, good. Now, with respect to reparation, we normally use the term reparatory justice because it's not just about giving money. It is about bringing about justice. As you know, we're here in the Western Hemisphere because of slavery. There's no doubt about it. For hundreds of years, we work for free. Not only did we work for free, we were forced to work for free. We were beaten to work for free. We were dehumanized to work for free. We were told that we were less than human beings in a sort of system that was created to dehumanize us and to subjugate us and to make us feel like we are less than who we are. That is why my trip to Ethiopia was so revealing. Not that there's nothing to be known, but when you come to the cradle of mankind and you realize that you are directly from there, it puts things in a different perspective. 200,000 years ago, human beings, by scientific study, might have come on the earth. 130 1,000 of those 200 years was spent in Africa. It's only the last 70 years that Africans left Africa to go to the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and come all around here, what we call the Americas. And as you go from region to region, people look different because of the different climate. All of it really to deal with exposure to sunlight. If you live farther from the equator, you tend to get clearer, or fairer skin, or white. If you live closer to the equator, you tend to be darker because of the melanin. The melanocytes are cells that produce melanin, which give the dark pigmentation to rebuff the UV light. Otherwise, you'll end up in cancer in the very sunny areas of the earth. That is why there's a difference in skin color. With respect to the nose, it is different because when you're living in an area that is hot, you want to be able to get that heat out, or you become overheated and die from overheating. But when you go to a cold region, you want a narrow nose to trap the heat so that you don't lose too much heat and die of being too cold, so to speak, right? And so I'm saying all of that scientifically so that people can understand, because sometimes I think at the root of things, after you'd have gone through slavery, where somebody consistently told you that you look a particular way because you're inferior, or your skin is dark because you're inferior. You look this particular way because you were the first on earth and you developed, you lived close to the equator. Now, with that system of slavery, it's obvious that those who were victimized, that justice should be had. And those who did the victimization are avoiding to carry out a process of reparatory justice. The ball is rolling. It cannot be stopped. Reparatory justice would come. Maybe in my lifetime or not, but it will come. It's just like when the anti-slavery movement started, you couldn't stop it. When the anti-colonization movement started, you couldn't stop it. It were Caribbean intellectuals who started the anti-colonization movement, with people like C.L.R. James, people like George Padmore, who, even though they were located in the United States and England, were in contact with people like Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya, Banter from Malawi. And you can go all around Africa and look at all of those who fought for the liberation and trace all of that back to the Pan-Africanism, the Pan-African Summit or Conference of 1945 in Manchester, England, after the Second World War, or towards the end of the Second World War. And they declared there that Africa and the Caribbean must be decolonized. And Nkrumah went back to Ghana. Jomo went back to Kenya. Banter went back to Malawi. And they started to work. And we know in 1957 that Ghana got its independence. And that set Africa ablaze. After that, the African nations, all of them started to fight for their independence. One of the biggest fights that took place was in Algeria, where I visited. And there was a man called Frantz Fanon from Martinique, who was a psychiatrist who studied in France, but had intellectualized and formulate, I will say, the intellectual argument around decolonization. And if you go back to his books, such as Wretched of the Earth and so forth, which I'm actually reading at this particular time again, you would recognize that his arguments really helped to set the stage that motivated and give agency to the movement in Algeria for its independence from France. So we have been on this journey fighting from day one for our independence on the African continent and in the Caribbean together. The reason why I mentioned C.L.R. James and George Padmore, and I will go all to recognize Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who was part of that process of decolonization and helping to reestablish Black people as a respected people here in the Western Hemisphere and even in Africa, that we have been fighting. But when slavery was ended in the 1830s in the Caribbean, do you know who got reparations? The plantation owners and the slave masters. So reparations were paid. Those who were the enslavers received their reparations. You know who did not receive any reparations? The enslaved. So when I make this argument here internationally, and it will be part of my UN speech, it is not, reparation has been paid and people need to know that. Have been paid, people need to know that. But we have not received any. So we are saying, so how can you give those who carried out the wicked act of slavery reparations and those who were the victim of slavery nothing? And that is why the Africa and the Caribbean is very much united to bring this to the United Nations. And because it has started, it cannot be stopped. It will end with reparations or reparatory justice being brought about. Just to say, we have a reparations committee. My office sponsored a member of the committee to go to England to study the whole question of reparations at the university level, so that our argument is not just an emotional argument, but it's a solid policy-based argument of how we are going to actually bring about reparatory justice for those who suffered the scourge of slavery. I have a 3-member committee that is working extremely hard. Ras Collins, who traveled with me to Africa, he is part of the committee as well. And so what we are doing is to create and to heighten that the Africa and its diaspora, who suffered so much from slavery and colonization, deserve to be paid. And I wouldn't say to be paid, but deserve reparatory justice, because it's not just about pain. And if you look at the CARICOM 10-point plan, you'll realize that the 10-point plan put forward from CARICOM is a very comprehensive plan, a very practical plan as well, as how we can go about to bring reparatory justice. But just to say, finally, we have identified one company in the UK who is willing to pay us for slavery. A company that benefited. I'm not going to call the name of the company yet. We have not accepted any money from the company. We are saying that this has to be in the framework of CARICOM. We don't want people to think that they can just now give payback and that ends the story of our reparations. I am thankful that that company has come forward. We did our research, we discovered the company. The company was reached out to, and the company has obliged to pay reparations. And I think maybe this is the first time I'm saying it. We have the name of the company. We know when the company was in St. Kitts and Nevis, where the company was, how many slaves they had. I think we possibly have the surnames of some of the slaves who were there. When they went back to England and end their operations here, and the company today still operating. There are big banks that's still operating. Now, we know that the Church of England apologized. The Church of England, which is the Anglican Church, also participated in slavery. However, we know that the royal family has not reached the point of apologizing. But the royal family is carrying out its own study to determine what role it played in slavery. And so that question will be asked. And so these are the things. So we are not doing this out of anger. We are doing this because it's about justice. It has nothing to do with anger and an emotional response. It has to do with justice. And we are determined that we will get justice. If I don't get it in my lifetime, the people coming after me, they will ask for justice. I will say the last thing on this, that Martin Luther King said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It's a fact. And where this unjust system destroyed the lives of millions, then it's only right that humanity, not just people of African descent, asks for justice on this, but that humanity asks for justice on this question. Let me say that others have received reparations. Japan received reparations. Germany was rebuilt after the Second World War. We know that. So how is it everybody gets something except African people of African descent? That is the injustice that still exists in this world order. In Africa and people of African descent, we have reached the point we have decided we must work together. Because if we don't do it for ourselves, nobody will do it for us. All we ask for, fundamentally, is justice.
After Mr. Prime Minister Kailoni Johnson, SKNIS. keeping on the theme of the Africa-CARICOM Summit, of course, you emphasize that the reparatory justice and the institutional linkages were key. But the question is, how do you balance these historical themes with the day-to-day needs of the people right here at home in St. Kitts and Nevis? And my second question is, with the new reciprocal visa-free access to Nigeria, what do the government see coming first? A cultural boom or business boom, or do you hope that they come hand in hand together?
Thank you very much for your question. With respect to the day-to-day needs, that's a very important question. That's why we're saying it's a reparatory justice. Part of it is how can you strengthen institutions in the Caribbean. Healthcare, for example. People will benefit directly from healthcare. Education, for example, people will benefit directly. Infrastructural development, people will benefit directly. And those are what I would call the tangible benefits, but they are non-tangible benefits. It brings a sense, having justice is a need, a human need. Human beings have a sense of what is right and wrong. And when things are happening wrong, that affects human being in a negative way, psychologically, socially. And therefore, bringing a sense of justice can help to bring about a deep healing for our people in Africa and our people here in the Caribbean. So it's beyond just the tangible benefits, but the intangible benefits, the spiritual benefits, the emotional benefits, the psychological benefits. Those things are important as well. Just think about anybody in their own situation. This is on the people level, the high level. But let's even look at it at the individual level. If something is done to you wrongly and you can't get justice, that bothers you. That is why you have a system and you always seek to bring people justice. But if something happens to you, even if it's wrong, but you get justice in the process, it helps the healing process. And so as a people, we also need to heal. And part of it is justice, justice for this scourge. So those are the tangible and intangible benefits that I just mentioned. Now, on the Nigeria end, we are finalizing the exact thing to be done. But what we are seeking here is to have more people-to-people contact and to have trade as well. We know one of the best trade routes established on the sea is the triangular trade that existed. You know, from Europe, you go to Africa, come to Caribbean, back to Europe. So Europe, go to Africa with all of the things to trade with the Africans, including the trade of people, plus the capturing of people and the enslavement of people. Just to say that every continent, every region had slavery. What was brought with this new type of slavery was what we call chattel slavery. Chattel slavery meaning you spend all the rest of your years in slavery and your children were born into slavery. And you were dehumanized. Slavery, even if you go to the Bible and you look at what slavery was, let's look at Joseph. I think it's Joseph who was sold by his brothers. I have the right person? Was Joseph who was sold by his brothers? I think so. I think Joseph was a younger of his brothers and he was sold by his older brothers because the father loved him so much. He went into Egypt as a slave. And he became what? A ruler. Joseph went all the way up in the upper echelons in Pharaoh's house. The story behind that is that in these cultures that practice that type of slavery, it wasn't a chattel slavery. You get in there and you're still 100% human being. You can work for your freedom, different things, and your children were not necessarily born into slavery. But this type of chattel slavery that was brought by the Europeans, justified in religious dogma, to dehumanize people for great profit to build Europe at the expense of the Caribbean and Africa, was a new type of thing. So I'm simply saying, I know I'm delving in this because it's important as well, that we are reestablishing this relationship, so to speak, with West Africa to convert this triangular safe trade into what we are calling transatlantic bridge. It is well established. It's easy to get a boat from West Africa to the Caribbean. Just think about the 16th century, for example, or the 17th century. The 17th century, rather, or the 18th century, when you have boats coming, these wooden boats coming from Africa to the Caribbean, wooden boats they used to use with sails, carrying millions of people over time. So now we have boats made of metal, which are much more robust and stronger. How we can get the boat from West Africa to the Caribbean to increase trade? That is a well-established route, well-established from Africa, Caribbean, Caribbean, Europe, Europe, Africa, Africa, Caribbean, Europe. That is a well-established route. So I'm saying that is why I'm calling it the transatlantic bridge of hope. It's hope. It is not based on the dehumanization of people, but it is based on reconnecting and the building of people. So that is why we are really pushing for this and hoping that we can increase trade and people-to-people contact. We have already seen some of that, but we want to institute a mechanism where this is the norm. I want a man to be able to say, man, I'm going to Africa on Saturday, coming back next week Saturday. You catch a plane, you go in Africa, you spend a week, you come back. Seeing what opportunities there. You might have a business in St. Kitts, but you're only catering for 50,000 people. Go to Africa, there's 1.5 billion people over there. All you need is 0.01% of the population to know about your product. That's more than the whole population of the CARICOM. And so we want to open up that population to our people, that market to our people, so you can market your goods in Africa. You know, one of the things they love old wood rum in Nigeria. They're developing a taste for old wood rum. Can you imagine if old wood rum can make bottles by the hundreds of thousands, and I'm not encouraging drinking, but I'm just saying as a commodity that they drink, they like already, that they can ship this over to Nigeria? Nigeria has 250 million people, roughly about 250 million people. If you take out 1% of that, that is more than the population of St. Kitts multiple times. If you take out 0.5% of that, you're still talking millions of people. And if you are able to just cater, let's say just in Nigeria alone, that is who I'm going to market to. Look at the market you have already. Look at that, even for the private sector. You can't be thinking of the 50,000 people in St. Kitts. There's only so much you can sell. If you open up 5 bars in St. Kitts, one doing well, all the others failing, because you only have a percentage who going out, and if all of them decide to go mostly to one bar, what happened to the other bars? The population is too small. We want to see jets coming from Western Africa. They have, thousands of people coming and landing, going to your bars, or going to your restaurants, going to your cultural centers, participating in sports and so forth, so that, in a sense, we don't see ourselves as the small region, but we see ourselves as part of this bigger global Africa, which will be 2.5 billion people, a quarter of the world's population, very, very soon. And so I want all people to start thinking outside the box. So I'm going to Cape Coast University next year, and I'm asking Cape Coast, how can we collaborate to have students from our country go to Ghana to study? Cape Coast is a high-ranking university globally. How can we get our people into Cape Coast? You might go over there, meet people, build relationships. You may or may not come back, might form families. You might bring people from over there to over here, start building families and people-to-people contact, and have access to a country that have millions of people. So if you are into business, and you have something of substance to sell, you don't just have to sell it here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Think about going over there to sell it. You don't have as much access to the US market. You don't have as much access to the European market, because those markets, you need visa to come, or you need this and that to that. They send you everything they have. But for you to send them anything, it's headache. Imagine sending some product here from here today. You got to get this certification, that certification, that. I'm not saying no. I agree that they should have the certification. But there is no facilitation to help us to reach those benchmarks. But the African Bank is setting up these centers where you can have your products certified internationally. They're not waiting for it to be certified anywhere. They set up these certified centers so your product can be certified. And they're building the trade center in Barbados, and we are pushing to have with that one of these centers that your product can be certified and be sent to the African continent. So, in a sense, that is what we are searching for. That is what we want.
This is a follow-up question. I know in St. Kitts, in certain realms, in quarters in St. Kitts, there are some skepticism in the population about doing business with Nigerians, Africans, about for lack of a better word, scamming and stuff like that. But how do you break that, that barrier, that skepticism in people's mind that Africa and Nigeria, they are really good trade and business partner that we can develop with?
Right. So how come they're trying to tell us that Nigerians are involved in this? I'm not saying that people are not involved in this. But why is it Africa and Europe, Africa and the USA are doing much more trade than the Caribbean and Africa? Again, trying to tell us who they are while others are benefiting. The trade value between Africa and the Caribbean is 1% of our total trade. Go and check the trade between Africa and Europe. Where do you think most of the African resources are going? The uranium, the lithium, the cobalt that's in your cell phone and so forth. Where do you think the soil, most of these things coming from? The African soil. Where do you think Nigerian oil is going? Nigerian oil and gas. Nigeria now has the largest refinery in the world. And where do you think a lot of their products are going? They refined products. The refined products are heading to Europe. I wish the oil and gas was coming here and we could drop the price somehow. But how come they're taking it, but we can't take it? So I say, I am not going to bury my head in the sand and say they're not issues. But how is it they are doing more trade with them than we are doing trade? Can't make sense. And therefore, if you can trade, we can trade as well. And I think that we should put safeguards in place, of course, to make sure that we can protect ourselves from anybody who might want to get into illegal business. And I just can't look at Africa, because most of the scamming that takes place in the world don't take place in Africa. Most scamming in the world takes place in the so-called developed countries. That's where most of the scamming take. Just go and look at the statistics. World percentage scamming, you'll see. Nothing to do. Africa does not rank among the number one countries with scamming. But I'm simply saying, if there are true questions, and I cannot not take those questions seriously, or there have been some portrayal of Nigerians to be the scammers of the world, I can't say that that picture has not been put out there. I cannot bury my head in the sand and say there are not going to be people who will try things, but that should not deter us from the vast majority of good business that we can have in Africa. And saying to our people that Marcus Garvey said it and he was correct. Padmore said it. C.L.R. James said it. The data suggested that we have to increase trade between the Caribbean and Africa, but we have to seek, of course, to do it with the safeguards that are necessary. So I will not take our people's concern lightly. I have to take it seriously and build, while we are doing trade, to put the necessary guardrails in place to protect our people. Right? And we can't guarantee those protection. We have to tread very carefully. Mm-hmm.
Prime Minister, you've often said trade must go up between Africa and the Caribbean. What practical steps are being put in place to make sure this momentum doesn't just remain at the level of speeches and summits? And then my next question is, and I love the fact that, we have spent a lot of time talking about reparatory justice, but I find that conversations and agitation here for reparatory justice tend to happen within pockets of people. What actions are being taken locally to make reparations more of a national or everyday conversation, a household topic, and to bolster support for the Caribbean's and CARICOM's push for reparations?
That is an excellent question. It has to get down to the grassroots. It has to get down on the ground, so to speak. Because if it's not there, we may not have enough momentum to push it forward. While the government and CARICOM have worked to make sure that this becomes an agenda item and become an important issue that has to filter down to the people. Now we have a committee for reparations. And exactly what you asked, I'm going to ask that committee for reparations that is time now to take the discussion to the streets, to the schools, to the churches, to the organizations, and to ask those who are pushing it from the regional level, such as Sir Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor for the University of the West Indies, who has been an ardent voice to push reparations, to really get involved in the local conversation as well. So we have to now take this from the high level and bring it down to the grassroots level. This reparation movement started in St. Kitts and Nevis in the early 2000s. I was part of it, myself, Ras Kolonji, and a few people. It was only maybe, I told Ras Kolonji the first meeting only had 5 people. I reminded him. I said, only 5 hours or so there. He think he remembered more. I said, no, I can't remember more than 5. And we had a sticker that says reparation now, and I put it up, and people asking me, what reparations are talking about and this, and they say reparations now because, you know, I'm steep in the teachings of Marcus Garvey and so forth. And I said, okay, but let's have a discussion. But I expected that type of reaction. And it is okay to have that type of reaction. And because people would want to know what this is all about. So now I think that there is more acceptance in the pockets, as you say, but it's time to now spread it throughout the whole country. And that is why I made the point that reparations have been paid. It's just that reparations were not paid to the victimized and the enslaved. Go and check the records. You check how much the British government and the British Parliament ordered to be paid to the enslavers. Go and check the record when we nationalized the land in St. Kitts and Nevis, how much we paid the plantation owners in the early 1980s for the land in St. Kitts and Nevis. We bought all the agricultural land. We didn't touch the Southeast Peninsula land. The Southeast Peninsula remained private land. I just want to reiterate that as well. But how much did we pay? We paid full market price. So we didn't get anything. We had to start from scratch. Our people were left, how must I put it? Really without anything. Let me put it that way. Decimated. That is why you had the Buckley's uprising. Because people were living horrible lives. No electricity, no water, no schools, no health care. That is how we were left. And then we were asked, on top of that, to take money to pay the enslavers. And then asked on top of that to take money to pay them for the land. That is what is happening in Haiti. One of the greatest wars ever fought in the Caribbean was between the French and the Haitians. And Toussaint Louverture was the leader of that. Eventually, when the French were beaten, they sent in Napoleon and his army. They captured Toussaint Louverture, brought him back to France, and he died in prison. However, after him came Dessalines, who defeated the French. And guess what? Haiti was asked to pay reparations to France. Up to until recently, that if you do the calculations, you're talking billions of dollars. How can a country that is just recovering from slavery find billions of dollars to repay the enslavers? So Haiti's situation is not out of the sky. It is because it was asked to pay back reparations. We were asked to pay back reparations as well. And therefore, all I'm simply saying is that I agree with the basis of the question that we really need to get this argument down to our people. The next question that was asked is about now all these speeches and summits and so forth. What are the tangible benefits of the relationship between Africa and the Caribbean? Now we can take it from multiple levels. We can take it from the perspective of education. As I pointed out for the first time, well, not for the first time, we have scholarships to Morocco, but we are expanding in Africa. We are now going to Tanzania, the Open University of Tanzania. We are going to Kenya to get into the TVET program. We are now heading over to Cape Coast University. So those are tangible benefits with our connection to Africa. Africa has a strong middle class, a vibrant middle class, educational systems in different areas that are solid that we can benefit from. The other thing that we are looking at is the healthcare sector, to establish stronger relationship between Africa and the Caribbean when it comes to healthcare. So part of the meeting was the healthcare aspect, which when we hold our CARICOM meeting here in February of next year, I will have a special symposium on healthcare. And I've already spoken to HEDPAC and African Union to come to St. Kitts and Nevis to help us to have a special meeting to deal with how we can connect CARICOM and the AU with respect to strengthening our healthcare system so that our people can benefit directly as well. As we are developing with Nigeria, to have a port facility that can facilitate trade between the Western Africa and the Caribbean. And so these are tangible ways that we are looking for, so that this is not just a talk shop. We can actually have direct, tangible benefits. That is what we are really seeking. And a benefit can be, man, if you can catch a plane and head to Africa and spend a week. I mean, when you go there, it is a whole different experience, believe me. I want our people to experience that. That you're in a country that you know is majority who you are, but you understand where you come from, and you feel whole again. I mean, when you touch down and you see your people, you feel whole again. You realize that all these things that people have been telling you, that your history began with slavery and all these things, you realize slavery is just a blip in the whole long history of African people. It really brings the point home of who you are and where you really come from. I can say this. There's a country in Africa called Benin that is offering citizenship to all black people in the Western Hemisphere for $100 US, saying, come back home. Huh? Yes. You just have to prove that. I mean, they could just look at you and look at me and say, man, look, you ain't got to do no test here, man. We know where you come from. Huh? So there are African countries who are reaching out like that, understanding its own, that, look, you have a home here in Africa, The second largest continent, the most arable land, the youngest population, resources can't end. How can we now seek to use those resources to develop Africa and its diaspora? So I'm simply saying that question is a very good question. How can this translate into benefits? We are already seeing benefits to the educational sector, and we are going to press on it in different countries in Africa so that our people can have access to their education as one way, access to their markets. That is what we want, access to their markets, because they got huge markets. One country with 250 million people is enough market for the whole Caribbean. And that's only one country. And we want to really have access to those as well. And they can have access to the Caribbean. Again, my point is the trade between Africa and the Caribbean is only 1% of what we do, which means we hardly do anything. The trade between Africa and Europe is way higher. The trade between Africa and North America is way higher. The trade between Africa and the East is way higher. And the trade between Africa and the Caribbean is a mere 1%. It's dismal, however, there is hope, because there's only one place to go now. That is up. If we open up these markets, we can help to advance and diversify our economies here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We just can't depend on CBI, as I've said. We have to diversify our economy and work hard to advance our people and give our people more opportunities, and to ask our people to think outside the box and to become pioneers and explore new frontiers. And the new frontier today is the relationship between CARICOM and Africa. The good thing is, in Africa is where your roots come from, and Africa where our people are. So that helps in terms of the connection that we seek. But yes, that is an important question. Our people are already benefiting.
Dr. Drew, some time ago, you mentioned that there is a development at the Fort Thomas Hotel, and that it will be turned into a Caribbean museum or Museum of Caribbean Life or something along those lines. You also indicated that at the time you couldn't give more information, but that you'll bring more details soon. My questions are on this. Who really owns the Fort Thomas property now? Because, it has changed hands, I think, at least once. And who are the developers, if you can talk about that? And what are the anticipated benefits coming out of this museum-type project? And when is expected to begin in terms of construction, and how soon it will start? The other question I have relates back to the Galaxy Jail project.
Which one?
The Galaxy Jail project. you will recall that some time ago, during the height of this matter, you indicated that you were reaching out to the applicants to get them to pay the required amount of money that was legal or along those lines, the required amount of money. At the time, it was 100 and something persons, I think you had mentioned. But it is understood that there are several thousands of applications with regards to this project. Have you pursued, or have your administration pursued this matter to all of the applicants, and what is the outcome of that? Statistically, how many have actually paid? Did some give up on their applications? That kind of thing.
Right. Thank you very much. With respect to the Fort Thomas, let me start there. It is going to be a Caribbean museum. When you look at where the Fort Thomas is located, you would recognize that because of climate change and the encroaching sea, if you look on the seaside of it, you'll notice that there is a lot of undermining of the land. It's almost as if it's going to collapse. So we need almost immediate investments there to really put some sort of structure there to protect that side of it. So it's important. It had been standing there for a long time without any investments. So we welcome this type of investment. I can say, you see, when you're dealing with persons, until you sign and you have done all your due diligence, you just don't call company's name. What if at the end they decide, at the last minute, they're not going to sign? They have a right to remain, I would say, undisclosed until you sign with them. But of course, we want to state to our people that all the due diligence, the reason why it's taken this length of time since the time that I said it is because we are carrying these people through due diligence. Because that process helps to determine if these, at the end of the day, are the type of persons who would invest. You want to invest in something like this. Are they who they say they are? You know what due diligence does. Are there any things hidden that we need to know? So, but I can say within a week, we would have closed it. I think so. Within literally a week. Most 2 weeks. That is how close we are to do it. I can say that some of the final documents have been sent to the AG's office. And the AG assured me that between last night and today, he will review it. He has reviewed multiple iterations because we want to make sure. You can't safeguard yourself from anything. But if anything were to go wrong, your people must be satisfied that you went to the fullest extent to make sure that you have the protections that are necessary. So we are very, very close to it. Our people are going to benefit from the construction that is to take place. We are going to benefit in the long-term job employment. We are going to benefit. It will be a major touristic site. I think it will be one of the major, we want to turn it into one of the major Caribbean museums to really say who we are as a people, to say who we are as Kitchens and Divisions, who we are as Caribbean people. And those long-term jobs. So you will have all those tangible benefits and intangible benefits. You set up museum and you're defining who you are. Those things have intangible benefits. If we were to listen to Mrs. Tavernier's presentation at the Prime Minister's lecture series, she explained that succinctly and brought home the point. We have to tell our own stories. Even so, sometimes it's not measured in profit and loss in terms of dollars and cents. There are intangible benefits, which money sometimes cannot buy. Defining who we are is one of those things. And therefore, that is where we are moving at this time. The land ownership, as you know, would have been here and there, but the AG has assured me that the land now belongs to us, to the government, and we will do what we have to do if there's anything else to be done with respect to it. So he has advised that that is the situation with the Fort Thomas Hotel at this particular point. We're expecting, I think, is about a $25 million investment to start to get the project underway. So there's jobs in construction, long-term jobs, and people working there. It will be part of our tourism product to help to bring people off the ship to have that type of indirect impact as well in terms of the economy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, with respect to Galaxy, we continue to pursue anybody, not just Galaxy, anybody who would have not followed the law with respect to our citizenship by investment program. So I just don't want to narrow it down to Galaxy. I want to say anybody at all. As you know, when I got in, I said the CBI would be the hardest thing that I would have to deal with. I think only after time when people see what was happening in the CBI space that people recognize what I meant when I said that. The risk that we had, the significant risk. We are not totally, other regions and countries can do what they want, but what I made sure is to change the laws and the governance and so forth to show to our international partners that we are serious about building the safeguards around our CBI program. And we continue to do that. For example, just now I'm going to sign with the rest of the OECS countries a document that we all agree to establish a regulatory body for the CBI across the OECS. And then I'm going to table in Parliament, I think it's on the 22nd or 23rd, very soon, the first iteration of the bill to deal with the regulatory body in the region. All of us are going to do it. 5 countries are going to do it. And so that is a huge step in the right direction, that we are now dealing with this as a region so that we can have that commonality between all of us. And the crux of the matter is the safeguard to our CBI programs and to our country. So we are moving there. So on the Galaxy, I don't have the numbers with me, but people continue to pay because if your due diligence is clean, and we backcheck a lot of the due diligence, our next thing is to make sure that you pay the amount. You haven't paid the amount to maintain your citizenship, you have to make sure you are given the opportunity to correct that wrong as an individual, as a family. If you don't correct it, then you lose it. Simple as that. And to say to those who are now coming, please follow the law. That is all we are saying, unless you were advised otherwise. But the advice will always be to follow the law. So that is where we are with the Galaxy matter, and we continue to. And anybody who has any evidence that anybody would have violated our CBI laws, as in any other law in St. Kitts and Nevis, that we would take the necessary actions to be taken. So just to wrap up, Fort Thomas is going to start construction this year. And I think construction going to start in November. And with respect to Galaxy, we continue to pursue, not just Galaxy alone, pursue anyone who would have violated our laws within the CBI space.
So, Prime Minister, let me pivot a bit. Recently, the government passed the Special Sustainability Zones Authorization Act that has now raised some concerns, particularly on social media among folks, particularly about the sale of land to foreign investors. What's your response? I'm pretty sure you might have heard about some of these concerns that people have been raised online. What's your response to such concerns? And what mechanisms are in place to ensure ordinary Kittitians and Nevisians benefit from these zones?
Thank you very much. As you know, part of the strategies of many countries is to set up zones like these, like in Panama and even the US, Europe, and so forth, to enhance investment and economic advancement. So this is not anything strange, and it is not a different type of strategy. It is just that we are now moving into this as part of our overarching strategy to diversify our economy. So let me put that forward. So this is part and parcel of what is being done in developed countries. I think countries like ours are now really catching on to the fact that these zones can really help to push economic development. If we want economic development, these are the type of things we have to do. Open up Africa, build ports, special zones for development and advancement. Some people call them industrial zones. What do you think industrial site was? It was a special zone. So if you built an industrial site, it was a special zone for industrial activity. Think about it. And therefore, this is not anything new to us here in St. Kitts in terms of having designated areas that deal with a specific type of economic activity for the overall economic development and advancement of our country. Now, in looking at that with respect to Nevis, I think it is chapter 10, if you go to our constitution, where I think it might be 10, where it talks about what the federal government is responsible for and what the Nevis Island administration is responsible for. The Nevis Island administration is responsible for its resources. And therefore, I am not even going to comment on what Nevis should or shouldn't do with its lands. If you read the Constitution clearly, what we have is a federal system with a Nevis Island administration. And part of what the Nevis Island administration is supposed to do is to manage its own resources. The Constitution does not give me the right to manage the resources on Nevis. I don't know if people recognize that. Sometimes I see people trying to pull me in. You can't pull me into Nevis affairs. If Nevis decide to sell the land here, what does that have to do with me? That is the Nevis Island admin, and it was specifically set up for that. In 1980, when the election was had, Labour Party won the most seat in St. Kitts. Ham Party wanted to form the government, and so they made a pact with the NRP of Nevis, led by that time by His Excellency National Hero, Sir Simeon Daniel. They came up with this constitution that excluded St. Kitts. The constitution recognized two entities, St. Kitts Nevis and Nevis. St. Kitts is not recognized in the constitution. Let me tell you how serious this is. Let's say someone from Nevis were to become prime minister. They can determine how we manage our land in St. Kitts. But if I am the prime minister, I cannot determine how Nevis manages its land. It's a serious constitutional matter, you know. So I say all the time, why are you including me in this? I can't be involved in this. This has nothing to do with me. The constitution is clear. Nevis manages its lands. St. Kitts Nevis federal government manages the land of St. Kitts. The constitution allows the fact that if a Nevisian becomes prime minister, they can control the land of both Nevis and St. Kitts, but a Kittitian who becomes prime minister cannot control ever the land in Nevis based on the constitution. But you're aware of that? I mean, I'm saying it now, I'm just internalizing it now. Do you know what the serious implication of that is? And therefore, I am simply saying that I have nothing to do with the land in Nevis. The Constitution tells me clearly, Prime Minister, the lands in Nevis are to be administered by the Nevis Island Administration. So I keep out of that. So I hope that the discussion on Nevis and they can resolve their matter. Where I come in is that the federal government is responsible for national security, immigration, customs, citizenship, and so forth. So if Nevis were to set up something that violates any of those, then I wouldn't step in to seek to manage Nevis's land. I will step in to say, you have violated the custom laws, you have violated the immigration laws, you have violated national security laws, you have violated our border security laws, the border, not the land itself. So if the Nevis Island Administration and the Premier has a particular project, where I come in and the federal government comes in is to make sure that these laws that I just mentioned that are on the purview of the federal government are not violated. Outside of that, I will please ask the people to please keep me out of that. The Constitution tells, this is why I'm not commenting on it. Keep me out of that, because I will not be accused of trying to take over Nevis's land. Let them settle over their land matter. When that comes to me as a project, I will look at it from the perspective of the laws and what is under my purview and the federal government's purview and make decisions on those. So if you can't bring to me that this special zone is going to violate any of these, it has nothing to do with me. As a matter of fact, I'll say, well, that is what Nevis chooses to do with their land. The federal government is not in a position to stop them or encourage them or anything like that. The federal government just looks over what is under its purview and Nevis handle its resources. So that is where that is. So I would really ask people to really keep me out of that argument that is taking place on Nevis. The Constitution tells me to keep out, and I will keep out.
Just on the sidebar to that, it is said that your administration has now the most likely advantage to change the Constitution. Is that one of the things that you're going to pursue soon? Because things might change. You could never tell.
Right. So part of what we are looking at is constitutional reform, so that all of these questions can be asked in a different era. But let me tell you what my basis is for that, though, is to see how St. Kitts and Nevis can work even closer together, to bring us even tighter together as a federation. That is why I'm working with the Nevis Island administration. It wouldn't matter to me who is in office in Nevis. I think there should always be the opportunity for St. Kitts and Nevis to work as closely together as possible. That is what, we are seeking. In the last election, no political party in Nevis wanted to work with St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. None. I can tell you that. Maybe this is the first time I'm saying it so frankly. And we took the decision as the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party that, and you remember, and it was started by the Deputy Prime Minister, we want to mix up, St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party asking for a mandate. And the people gave us a mandate. And so one is the political question, and the other is the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. We believe in a strong relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis, a very strong, robust relationship. The better we work together, the better it will be for St. Kitts and for Nevis. And so I don't entertain talks about secession and those type of things. But every time the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party is in power, there are people who want to raise that question. Not with this iteration of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration. We want a better relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. Can you imagine the smallest country in the Western Hemisphere talking about secession? Have we fought any wars? We have never fought a war. West Germany and East Germany, they fought on different sides, and together they're one Germany. Japan and America fought a brutal war during the Second World War, and today Japan and America trading much more than Africa and the Caribbean. So how is it the smallest country in the Western Hemisphere, where we are brothers and sisters, literally, blood relatives? I can never entertain a conversation like that, because that undermines the whole concept of CARICOM coming together as one, OECS coming together as one, Africa Union and CARICOM coming closer together, Global Africa, the African diaspora and so forth. That undermines it significantly, and therefore, wherever there are opportunities to build a stronger relationship, that is what we should seek to do. So any constitutional reform that is to take place, I will, of course, be pushing very strongly that whatever comes out of it, there will be a stronger St. Kitts and Nevis, a stronger, more united federation. That is what I'm really pushing for with respect to that. But if you want, go to the Constitution and see what the Constitution says about what the federal government, the responsibility of the federal government with respect to Nevis. Nothing to do. As a matter of fact, land is totally out of that. So I would reiterate that. Let the Nevis Island administration and the processes in Nevis determine what they would do with their land. Where I come in is where the federal government has a responsibility of national security and so forth to make sure that those things are not violated in any agreement that is made. But from that standpoint, I refuse to comment on what Nevis decides to do with its land.
Prime Minister, I'm going to take us back a little bit to the Africa, connection and that conversation that we have been having. And I'm asking this question within the context of our upcoming independence celebrations and thinking about our broader vision of self-actualization. So you called the trip to Ethiopia a sort of pilgrimage, and you shared some examples of establishing educational connections with other African countries. How important would you say visiting the African continent and countries like Ethiopia in particular is for helping us build Black and African consciousness? And are there plans beyond educational partnerships for exchanges?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. That is a fundamental question, and it goes to the heart of the matter. One of the things that human beings do, one of our characteristics is who we are. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Those, I said one of the things, but I mean, as a grouping of questions. These questions are very important. And that is what these questions have driven men, and they continue to drive men, or humanity, let me put it that way, humanity. I take back that men word, humanity. If you go to any place in the world, people have museums, they have their art, literature, all expressing who they are as a people. And to a great extent, because we were miseducated in the Caribbean as to who we really are, that part of us remained fractured. And as a result of that, as a people, it caused some fracture. That needs healing, and the healing process has started. Going to Africa completes the healing. Why? Because when you go there and you recognize that a lot of the information you were given were lies, and then you recognize the truth and also recognize who you are in the grand scheme of things as a human being on this earth, that you actually came from the original people, that you were civilized before all these other civilizations were set up, that you had language, you had art, you had culture, you had agriculture, you had construction, you had religion, all of the things that determine whether or not we are human beings are the things we use to determine us as a species, our human beings. Those things existed in Africa long before they got to any other part of the earth. I mean, that is powerful. And you come directly from that. It is powerful. And I think that pilgrimage is important for us to go and see where we actually come from. And that our history didn't start with slavery. That slavery is very recent in terms of the long history that our people have had. Words can't describe it. I'm trying my best to see how I can convey it, but words really can't. You have to actually see it. You have to actually stand in a street in Africa and recognize that the people you are looking at, that you are part of this global Africa and you're part of the original people of the earth. That is powerful, to actually see it, feel it, touch it, and to recognize your contribution to humanity. Because at the end of the day, what I really want is that humanity can really live as one. Because the truth is, all of us are Africans, whether we're white, Chinese, Indian, Caribbean, wherever. Because that is where we all come from. As I said before, the different variations in skin color and hair texture, those things are just superficial, and actually because of the different climate patterns around the world and where people settle. So that in itself is very important. Now, when you look at the whole question, as you asked about with respect to independence and the broader vision and so forth, let me tell you how I see that. That our independence in 1983 came as a result of the end of colonization. But that independence had to happen because of what was done to us as a people. But I want to fit our independence into a broader picture. That independence and how we became as a people did not start there. We had been miseducated to think that that is where it had all started. It started long before that. But that is when, of course, we became politically independent, in the sense that Britain would not make those political decisions for us. So this is what I would call a political independence. But it's critically important. But the broader vision is who we are as a people. Where do we come from? Where are we going? How would we define ourselves? So that is why we have to tell our stories. That is why museums are important. That is why writing is important. That is why literature is important. That is why the arts are important. Because the arts allow us to express who we are and define who we are as a people. The art allows us to do that. When we paint ourselves, our people, our experience, who we are. When we sing, that is what we do. When we dance, that expression. When we write, that is what we do. And that is why it's important that this independence, we should really reflect on who we are as a people and how we can truly understand that and how do we express it and continue to define ourselves. Don't allow people to define us. I mean, if people define you, if they like you, they say all sorts of bad things about you. And then they turn that knowledge back on you and you start to believe their distortions. We should be at the forefront. So I said to our people, as was said, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of these platforms. Let us use these platforms to tell people who we are. I mean, we use this platform. Sometimes I look at the platform and say, we are missing such great opportunities to spread messages of who we are instead of using it for things that are not really benefiting us. So in the broader sense, I see this independence giving us an opportunity as well to reflect, to help us to define who we are as a people as we build towards a sustainable island state. Defining ourselves as a people is the most important aspect of all of this. If we don't know who we are as a people, everything else that comes after that will just be like, as they say, dust in the wind. We need a solid foundation, and it starts by us determining who we are as a people, and then we can build on that.
My last question, because realize we're running out of time. Some months ago, the sale of Christopher Harbor Marina to Safe Harbor Marina, there was an indication that Safe Harbor Marina would be doing some substantial expansion to accommodate even larger super yachts. So my question is, have they started anything as yet? And also in relation to the marine component of Christopher Harbor, in 2007, I believe, as part of the agreement between Christopher Harbor and the St. Nevis government, the seabed was leased to Christopher Harbor in perpetuity. How is that possible under our laws? And isn't that a challenge to our security, national security, or also to our sovereignty in the long run?
So I wasn't a part of that agreement, but as you say, it was leased within our laws at any point, and that is what His Excellency Sir Robert Llewellyn Batcher used when he took back all of the land in the 1970s. At any point, if anybody who is leasing our land, anybody who lives on our land, seek to violate our Constitution, the Constitution itself has the mechanism to correct that. So let's say Christopher Harbor is misusing the land over there. We can go over there and take back the land. You sure eminent domain, you are aware. So we have an aspect in our Constitution that speaks to eminent domain. Eminent domain even allows me to come for your land if you have land here. If we think that your land is violating the larger national security matter. So I am not so worried about whether they're leasing the land for a year or two. What I do know is that within the Constitution is that at any point, anybody who violates any of our laws and we need to take back the land, eminent domain allows us to go and just seize it. And so, in a deeper sense, you don't want to use that haphazardly and so forth, but you keep monitoring to make sure that what you say you use it for, you are using it for. And at any time, our government determine that there's a broader, better use of land, compensating people, of course, that they should be compensated. They should not be put to a loss, that we can acquire that land or that space to do exactly what we want. So we have a mechanism to do. Yes, they've actually started their work. So they're in the process of procuring all that they need. They've sent, they're putting all of that together. This is going to be one of their biggest bases within the Caribbean region. We're expecting a very upscale, vibrant yachting season in November, because they're going to start doing business in November. We needed more immigration officers. We needed more customs officers. We're actually going to be putting a base over in Christopher Harbor, custom officers and immigration officers, to make sure that they're complying with the laws that they should comply with in terms of, what should be done. So we are ramping up from the government's point of view and also from the business of yachting point of view as well. And that is already providing jobs for our people. And we want that to become a premier yachting destination in the Caribbean, part of our efforts to diversify the economy. My message to our young people is to get these jobs. Because the reason why we are providing these jobs, we don't want our young people to be on STEP and so forth, because those things don't. STEP is a training program, does not allow our people to fully actualize themselves. So even though we'll have a number of people on STEP, we want to provide even better opportunities for our people once you get your training to move on. Because these jobs don't pay minimum wage. They pay way above minimum wage. That is why we have started TVET. And I want to thank the Minister of Education, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, who was determined that TVET must be established in St. Kitts and Nevis. He himself, who is a career teacher and understands the importance of education, that the first graduation of TVET was had just recently. That certification that those young people get, or those people got, that allows them to work in any CARICOM country even, with that certification. They can travel. This is a serious certification. So we want our people that, and it allows you to get your certification quicker. So let's say you are a skilled person in, let's say, masonry. You come to TVET. TVET help you in 6 months. You can have your certification as a mason. So when you show up for a job here or anywhere, you show up certified with an NVQ, a CVQ. That is very serious and empowering. So our young people who are not interested in the academic side of things and they want to become a plumber, we are now going to have it as an institute, not just have it. It will be an institute because it will be given certification that is regionally accepted and respected. And the reason why we want to do that is that look at the civil service. The civil service is set up in a way where plumbers can't be what you call appointed to the civil service. That will change. The same way you could go to college and get a university degree, and that is excellent. We want more people to go. And you decide you want to go down the academic path. What will happen to our people who want to go down the vocational training path? They too must have the opportunity to be appointed in the government. The government needs plumbers too. The government needs electricians. The government need masons. And for too long, those in these technical fields were treated as second class. And we will end that. Very much. Mike. Uh-huh.
Sorry. The private sector will also benefit, I guess, from this, because yes, one of the complaints I've heard is that someone who has technical skills, abilities, and they go to gain employment, but they have nothing to prove exactly what they can do. Exactly. There's no certification. Yes. So you say you can do this, A, B, and C,
yes,
but I really can't tell.
Exactly.
Right? So I guess it will help.
Excellent. So what that does is to make sure that our people who are very skilled here can go there, get that piece of paper, and then they can show up and say, look, this is my certification. I have a CVQ, an NVQ, which is certified and accepted. So you now have confidence. Not only that you're going to raise the whole level of, in which we this field is practicing in St. Kitts and Nevis. When people know, boy, okay, I'm going here for my certification. There are people here who are good electricians, for example, have no certification. You want those people to say, no, come. You already have the skills. Let's get you formalized and get your certification so that when you show up, people are not second guessing you. And when you show up, you know your worth. They say, I am certified as well. And this is how much I think I should be paid. This is how I should be treated. These are the benefits I should have. Look at my certification here. So we want to do that. So a lot of our young people who are not interested in the academic line can go into the vocational line and be guaranteed, the respect and the prestige that they deserve as well to go along with their compensation and their benefits and so forth. So I can't stress enough how elated I am that finally, we have established TVET here in St. Kitts and Nevis. That, I think, is a serious paradigm shift that will benefit our people. So those young boys and young people who I see sometimes, they're interested in the academia, say, man, go and learn a trade, get certified. Go and learn a trade, masonry, plumbing, become an electrician, air conditioning, but become certified. So that when you show up at the hotels and so we're going to be building or at a business or institution, people can be guaranteed you can do what you say you can do. And you should be treated with that respect. So it's a great paradigm shift, and I can't thank the Deputy Prime Minister enough for making sure that that becomes a reality. One of the other things I wanted to touch, we also started for the first time training at CFBC for PSs and directors within the civil service. So the civil service is going through a transformation. PSs, I think, I have to see how long the course is, but it's 6 months? 16 weeks course to become certified, to be able to lead at that level. People come as PSs and they're not given the tools. They have the capacity and the capabilities, but it's not fair to them. They too should be given the tools. So they're going to go to CS. So I want to thank the Peter Jenkins Organization Institute for joining with CFBC and creating the curriculum for this training for our leadership in the civil service, PSs and directors. And all of them would have to go through this training. And I think that would help us to create a more professionalized civil service. For the first time, this is happening, and we have done it. So again, training and education, these things never stop. They're lifelong things. And so we're going to take the training in all different spheres so that this country can be a country where Kittitians and Nevisians are known to be persons involved in continuous learning. Kittitians and Nevisians are known as people who want to become better at what they do. Kittitians and Nevisians are hard workers and smart workers, well-equipped workers. We are striving to establish a sustainable island state. That is who we are. Let us start creating who we are. In the same token, we can have fun and jump up and have all of that, but on the other hand, we are serious people seeking to create a country that is sustainable and a country that will serve us now and serve us way into the future.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of the question and answer segment for this session of the Prime Minister's Roundtable. However, before we end, Prime Minister, I'll turn it back over to you for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Press Secretary. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to making sure that these types of fora are had so that I can really share information with our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to thank the press, all of you, for being here this afternoon. And to you, our people, I want to thank you for joining me. I have shared as much as possible the information that I have here, and the press would have asked freely all the questions that they wanted to ask. I want us at this time of independence to really reflect on who we are as a people, where we are, where do we want to go. I want us to seek always to strive for the best that we can be. We are small, but as we say, we are small, but we are Talawa, which means our size does not define who we are and what we can do. We are much beyond that. We have achieved a lot over this near 42 years. In the next 42 years, we should be able to achieve more. There will be challenges. There will be ups and downs. But I encourage us, St. Kitts and Nevis, to continue to strive to work even closer together, for there to be more social cohesion, for us to look out for each other, and for us to build a country that is about care, a country that is empathetic, a country that is hardworking, a country that is self-sufficient, a country that wants to be sustainable. So if we define ourselves as these type of people, I think that as a people, we will be able to achieve much more. It is within our grasp. It is up to us to really take hold of it. So for this independence, as we move forward, let us continue to work harder for that better St. Kitts and Nevis. And lastly, to say, once again, I extend my deepest condolences to the family and friends and all of us on the passing of Sir Edmund Lawrence, one who came from humble beginnings to build one of the largest indigenous banks in the OECS, one that has been fundamental in building our St. Kitts and Nevis. Let us remember him. Let us not allow our people who have worked so hard and give of themselves to contribute. Let us not allow their names to just go like dust in the wind. But let us celebrate them, because when we celebrate them, it says to all of us that your contributions will always be respected and honored by the people who benefited and by the people who benefited the most. May God bless all of you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for always making time to engage with the media in efforts to ensure that their questions and concerns are addressed as they continue to ensure that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis are informed of what's happening in and around the government. We continue to extend our gratitude to platforms, the various platforms that facilitate live hearing and coverage of the Roundtable, ensuring that the public and citizens within the diaspora and locally remain informed as well. Thank you, and see you next time for the Roundtable.